Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing Connections podcast. I'm Emmy Vadnais, and today we are talking about yoga for kids with Theresa Tovey, who also goes by Terry. She's an occupational therapist who uses children's yoga as a therapeutic modality in her work as a public school occupational therapist. Embedding students' OT goals into what she calls sensory motor yoga has allowed Terry to work holistically, addressing the development of the whole child. Recently, in 2015, Terry became a lead trainer for Radiant Child Yoga. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Emmy. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we are both occupational therapists, and we've met through the holistic OT community. And there's so much to talk about. You're currently working in the public schools, providing yoga. Can you share a little bit about how you do that? Or I know you're also a teacher of teaching healthcare professionals and people interested in yoga, but maybe if we can start with, you know, your daily routine of helping people, the children in the schools, because that's really where I think if more of us could learn some of these things at a younger age, what a different world we'd be in.
Yes, well, I agree with you 100%. I've been teaching yoga to children for about 10 years now, and started off without a lot of formal training. But I can talk about that a little bit more later. But what a day for me looks like is, well, for a week, I probably teach about 15 to 16 yoga classes a week. I teach 4 preschool classes. I'm in every single kindergarten. I teach a first grade, a second grade, 3 third grades, a 4th grade, and a 5th grade this year. And I have a whole 6th grade group that's just special needs children. So sometimes yoga might be one-on-one, sometimes it's whole class, and sometimes it's small group. And I just integrate all my goals and objectives as an OT right into my yoga groups, and it works seamlessly. And I have to say, since I've been doing this, all my goals and objectives are getting realized at least as quickly, if not even more quickly, than when I used a more traditional model.
Oh, that's great to hear. So when you're doing all these classes, which sound like so many, are these children who have like an IEP, an individual education plan? And are any of them students who are not also receiving therapy, or are they all receiving occupational therapy?
Um, so when I do my one-on-ones, they would all either have an individual education plan, or they might have a 504 plan, the American Disabilities Act, so they might have more of a physical disability. When I do small groups, oftentimes it's 50-50. So 50% are on my caseload, and 50% kids volunteer, and their parents often sign a waiver saying that they would like their children to have this yoga experience. Or it's a whole class. So if it's a whole class, often there's at least 2, maybe 4 children on my caseload, or at least on consult. So they will get the experience, as will the whole class, and nobody really knows why I'm in that particular class for which particular students, because the whole class receives the benefits.
Oh, how lovely. So what have you seen, or what are the ways that yoga has been helping all these children?
Oh my gosh, I don't think I can even count how many ways. So, and for every child, it's a little bit different, just like people take adult yoga classes and they get different things out of them. So for some children that might have a physical impairment, they may gain improved balance, improved core muscle strength, improved ability to just coordinate and motor plan their movements. And just, I find that they become more confident. So the more they do yoga, the more confident they are, and the more apt they are to try other physical activities. So that would be one group. Another group I see as students that have a lot of difficulty with what I would call self-regulation. And it could be emotional regulation, physiological regulation. And some of these children, you know, might be on the autism spectrum, might have anxiety, but some of them are just typical children that, because of today's, just what society is like today, and all the pressures and stresses that they're experiencing in their young lives, are just having a hard time self-regulating. And so the tools that they'll learn in yoga, and we do call them yoga tools, they can use not just in yoga group, but they could use throughout their day, in school and at home, to help them to regulate themselves. And then there's also just the physical fitness of all the children, and being able to take that mind-body connection to a whole different level. So, I work on children becoming aware of their external senses, but also interoception, their internal senses, so that they can identify better, what are those internal signs that are telling them that they might be getting anxious, or that something's happening in their body that they might need to use a yoga tool to create a shift. So kids benefit just like adults in all those areas, and focus. And of course, when you do meditation, and a children's yoga class is not that much different than an adult yoga class. However, I do think that in more cases, we work on breath work and meditation even more than in an adult class, which I find to often have longer asana or physical practice. So all those work together to create many shifts.
Yeah, well, I hear what you're saying. I know yoga can there's so many research benefits now of yoga. And when you're working with these children, how quickly do you tend to see these changes in them? Or when do they start to seem to kind of have a light bulb go off where they are like, oh, I have these new tools to use, and you can see that their confidence grows?
I think it's different for every child, but I will say the reason why I like to get them at age 3 and 4 is that they latch onto it so quickly. And so for some children, it's their first yoga class. And for some other children, it could take a couple of years. I have some students that are in 6th grade now that have been having yoga with me for 7 or 8 years, which is really exciting. And I can think of a couple in particular that it was really difficult for them. They might have had a lot of hyperactivity, being on the autism spectrum. But when I look back and I look at pictures of what they were doing at age 3, 4, 5, and 6, and what they're doing now at 10, 11, and 12, and they're teaching, and I always have them practice teaching. So they teach to each other, they teach to me, and it's very empowering. So to get back to your question, it's different. So for some kids, they latch on like that. And for other kids, it takes a little longer. I always think of planting seeds. Mm-hmm. And, some seeds are going to have those right conditions to grow really quickly, and others it might take longer. But one thing that I hear a lot from parents is I might have a child who appears to not be interested in yoga, or just there's no requirements for them to participate. My only rules are they stay on their mat and they stay, focused on me, and just don't interrupt anybody else's yoga. And sometimes there'll be children that are just really self-conscious at a young age, but yet their parents will tell me that they teach them all the yoga I teach them at home, or they practice in their room. And then when they're ready, they start doing it with group.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that what you're teaching the children, many of the children go and teach their parents.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I hear that all the time.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, it really is spreading quite a lot. It sounds like quite a unique public school system you're a part of. Is this something that you brought into this particular school setting, or was it already there and you went there because it was available to be able to teach this? Or you just brought it into your occupational therapy, which I know a lot of healthcare practitioners are starting to bring in these integrative health approaches.
Yeah, it was more the latter, that I had this is my 31st year working in the school system. So for 20 years, I didn't do any yoga with the kids. And there was one time when some teachers were playing around with showing yoga videos, and the kids loved it. But in my mind, it wasn't true yoga. The kids had a lot of fun, but it was more them connecting with the screen and doing physical activity than what I would consider true yoga. And so by bringing it into the school, I started really small. I just started at the preschool level. And as a matter of fact, I had a level 2 OT fieldwork student who was a yoga instructor. And I asked her, how would you teach yoga to preschoolers? And she really gave me a lot of ideas. And it was actually right after that that I decided to pursue training myself in children's yoga. I've been so fortunate to have both teachers, administrators, parents 100% support what I'm doing. And I think that by starting small, administration was a little leery in the beginning. So in the beginning, I had to think about my language more. So instead of using the word meditation, I would say stillness, but then the kids would always say meditation. So I would just say, okay, it's meditation. Let's call it what it is. So as careful as I was in the beginning, I never really came up with those obstacles that I've heard other people, other places have come up with. And I have to say that, I live in small country towns. There's 3 towns in our school district. And we certainly don't have a yoga studio on every street corner like you would in a city. But a lot of my students' parents and grandparents, even more times than not, they'll say that their grandparents are teaching them yoga.
Oh, wow.
So it's really embedded in the culture. And I've done a lot of training with adults as well. So for example, there was a local child's librarian who took the training, a lot of the preschool teachers outside of the school. So I think kids are getting it from many avenues these days. Mm-hmm. And just 2 weeks ago, I had a new kindergarten class. And so 10 years ago, had I asked kindergarten, raise your hand if you've ever done yoga before, and I might have maybe 2, 3, 4 hands raised. Last two weeks ago, there was only a handful of hands that weren't raised. So at least 3/4 of the class had yoga even before entering kindergarten.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it really is spreading. And I'm glad to hear that you're using the terms yoga and meditation, because that is what it is. I know some places there's people who have a belief that it's a religion. It is not a religion. And sadly, some of the religious leaders have taught them that it's against their religion, when really it can be woven into anybody's belief system or practice. I know for me, it's really enhanced my own life with my own particular beliefs and so forth. So, and how would you say, or how is it different teaching children than working with adults? You mentioned there's a little bit more meditation, breath work, things of that nature. How is it adapted so that the children enjoy it?
Okay, so every yoga class has a progression. So we always start off with a tune-in, and that tune-in could be breath work. It could be a movement. Like one of my favorite things to do is have them rub their hands together really quickly to create heat and energy, and then close their eyes and notice the difference between how their hands feel and how they feel internally when they're going fast, going slow. That's one of my favorite tune-ins. Balloon breaths or sun breaths. I use a Hoberman sphere sometimes. So in an adult yoga class, depending on the type, being trained in Kundalini yoga, they do a lot of breath and meditation, breath meditations, breath work. So with the Hoberman sphere, I might have them practice slow abdominal breathing, but then I change it up and have them do some really quick breathing. We live along the Connecticut River, and there's an Essex steam train, which makes a certain sound, and so we'll call it Essex steam train breathing, just to make it fun. And then there's always warm-ups. So we warm up all parts of the spine, going in every direction. And I teach them a lot of anatomy. I have a little mini skeleton next to me when I teach. So I try and bring science into it, or I'll bring in for the older classes, what your respiratory system looks like, and what happens with your diaphragm when you're inhaling into and expanding, and then exhaling. So after we do the breath work, the warm-ups take place, all different movements of the spine. And then the type of yoga I teach, especially for the younger kids, is very music and movement based. A lot of crossing midline, a lot of motor planning, and it's active. And that's what attracted me to this particular program that I'm trained in, is that being 75% based in Kundalini yoga, which is much more about moving energy, and it's very aerobic, and about 25% hatha, or maybe 20%, maybe 5% vinyasa. The kids who are, especially younger, are not going to want to hold postures for very long. A breath or two might be it. Whereas if you're doing something more active and vigorous, and then you pair it with slowing it down and breathing slowly, they just tune right into that. And then when we do our meditations, they're not always silent, still meditations. I notice that you have a singing bowl. I bring mine in every once in a while too, or I'll use tincture chimes. and have them just do a listening meditation. But a lot of the other meditations that I do are movement meditations where they're very repetitive and they're doing some chants. And a lot of them are positive affirmation chants.
Oh, nice.
And so positive affirmations are just embedded throughout the whole practice. And then there's always, 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 always a relaxation. If I forget relaxation, no, I would never forget relaxation. If I don't allow enough time for relaxation, they're not happy because they, it's really interesting. You would think that kids would not want to lay down and just be still. That's what they want the most.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
I love how you're describing it. It flashes me back to my own grade school and kindergarten and upbringing of movement, phy ed, gym class. But this seems truly in the realm of mind-body, of mind-body awareness, mind-body spirit, and teaching young people how to be with their body, their breath, their thoughts, their consciousness, which is ultimately what we all experience, but most of us were not taught at a younger age how to be with our thoughts, our emotions. And so I just really thank you and all of those who are bringing this to the young people in the world. And for all those who are maybe interested, but maybe you're an adult now, I believe you can begin, yoga at any age, as long as you, talk with your primary practitioner, make sure they know your health background and so forth. And so things can be modified or adapted for you as needed, because really everybody can do yoga.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like a really beautiful experience for the children. And it also, I can see where, I know there's meditation research, there's many benefits of meditation. And I know that over time, the researchers might want to tease out, where's the benefit coming from? And I'd love to hear your thoughts, since you worked with so many people, on why do you think, what is happening, do you think, with the physiology, the energy and so forth that brings about these changes? But it seems that what you're describing, or how you're describing it, makes me think of, and you said the word focus and attention, and there's research that shows that people who meditate regularly, I think I've seen research studies of it around 3 times a week to about 20 to 45 minutes per time, for at least 6 weeks, people can have all sorts of changes in their neurological system and their cortex for focus, attention, and memory, which is really important for all of us, and especially school-age children.
Yeah. Yes, those are all, and of course, from administrative, point of view, that is a huge selling feature for integrating yoga within the school system, because who doesn't want children who are attentive, who can access both their short-term and long-term memory, who are able to just take in that information and integrate it in many different ways. So those are huge selling points for school administrators. And I think that's where the teacher buy-in comes in too, is when teachers see that after a yoga class, or, they may take parts of what they see me do in yoga, or many of them have already taken some yoga training with me or other places, and they will embed it within the school day. They see right away how those changes make a huge difference. A couple of weeks ago, the social emotional program that we've adopted throughout our whole district is called Choose Love. And I consider the tenets of Choose Love to be the yamas and the niyamas of yoga. So Choose Love there's 4 main tenets, and there's courage, there's gratitude, there's compassion and action, and there's forgiveness. And so if you think about it, if you embrace and embody all those characteristics, you've really covered all those yogas ethics, both personal and social. And so what I find is more and more schools, for very good reasons, are incorporating a social emotional program throughout their whole district. And yoga has created a platform for me to more closely integrate with what's going on in the whole school environment anyway. So I'm working much more closely with our school counselor, our school psychologist, and the teachers. So I will take the lessons from their social emotional program, and I'll bring them into my yoga classes, and modify them in some ways to make them more yoga-ish, but it's all giving the children the same messages. And it's just creating a lot of consistency throughout the school, which is beautiful. And again, administrators love when we have a curriculum or a program that really spans all grades and all children.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have your heart or your thumb on the spirit and the heart of the school. And it sounds like it's really been inspiring and has really been received well where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you think it is about yoga that can bring about so many positive changes? Now, certainly it's not a panacea,
Right.
but I think that if people are drawn to it, or if you're listening and you're interested, if you're an educator or healthcare practitioner and want to get trained in it, by all means, listen to that call. What do you think it is about yoga that makes it so unique that can bring about these positive changes?
I think that if you think about what's different between yoga and physical exercise is awesome. We all need physical exercise, and it's great for, developing your executive function skills. We need that. But I think what makes yoga different is that you're really pairing the mind, the body, and the breath or spirit together in a way that's mindful. So yoga is mindfulness. The two words can sometimes be interchanged. So I think that when students learn to be able to both take in the outside information they need to take in, but yet at the same time be able to screen out what's not relevant for them, their focus improves. I think that so focus would be one big area of what yoga is different in the school system. I think their ability to really self-regulate is really embedded in yoga, because you learn so many tools, whether it's through the moving meditations or whether it's through, even relaxation, calming your body, being able to let go of thoughts, whether it's through the asana practice or breathing, that really makes a difference for children. I did a really quick and dirty informal study a couple weeks ago. I bought one of those finger oxygen and heart rate meters.
A pulse oximeter? Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so one of the Choose Love lessons was on courage, and they teach brave breath, which is really just abdominal breathing, which you do in yoga all the time, but it's part of the Choose Love lessons. And so I had them imagine what made them afraid. Is it taking a test or whatever? And then talked about the sympathetic nervous system, whereas when you're afraid, you either fight, flight, or freeze. And I wasn't going to have them fight, obviously, but I did have them jog really fast as though they were running away from what they were afraid of for about 45 seconds. And then we did some progressive muscle contract, relax. I brought in spaghetti, where uncooked and cooked, where they pretended they were uncooked spaghetti and then cooked spaghetti. And then I had them immediately go into brave breath, which is abdominal breathing for 45 seconds. What I forgot to mention is their heart rate was recorded before we started. It was recorded after they finished jogging, and it was recorded after the abdominal brave breaths. And we got to see with every student how it started here, it went way up here, and in just 45 seconds, they were able to bring it back down again, which was really cool. And it gave them a visual of just how powerful these tools really are, and how in just 45 seconds, if you're nervous about a test or you're nervous about, a swim meet, you can change your whole physiology really quickly.
Yeah, that giving them that a very simple form of biofeedback that they can listen to, or maybe even learn eventually how to check their own pulse. It's interesting when you were mentioning around the self-regulation piece. I know when I practice yoga or doing the physical asanas that when we're getting into the poses, there's a certain amount of adjustment that happens to get into the proper alignment. Now, I was formerly most trained in BKS Iyengar yoga.
Huh?
So a lot of the training I had in that was holding poses for
Right.
2 to 5, sometimes 10 minutes. That was unusual, but sometimes we would. And so that in and of itself can really exercise that focus part of us, and that can help us drop into our bodies, right? So we're not thinking about the past or the future, and to be able to have that our own mind-body connection within there. Before too much time passes here, Terry, I'd like to ask you, what is your definition of yoga? Because I think that there are a lot of different ways that people define what it is. And some people have a very simple definition, and sometimes it might seem it's a little bit longer. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, I guess if somebody asked me the simple definition, I'd give a very standard one: the yoking or union of mind, body, breath, or spirit, depending on your audience and what they, I use in the school system, I would use breath. But I also believe that yoga is how you approach life. And once you've made that mind, body, spirit, or breath connection, you can take that throughout everything that you do. And that's probably the point I'm trying to get across to children too, is that your yoga just doesn't take place on a mat. It just doesn't take place in a yoga group. Your yoga is really the way you approach life.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, there's a children's book that I often start off the school year with that says, "I am yoga." And it's just a really simple book, but the whole point is that you are your yoga. And
Yes, because that definition of yoking the spirit, or your mind, body, and spirit, as you were saying, that union, that divine connection, or that connection within yourself. And for those who are more religious or spiritual, many would say or believe that it's a connection to the divine, the all, spirit, God, however a person might conceive of that, which I have found in my life with yoga. Many years ago, I was looking for some type of physical movement that would have a spiritual component, and so yoga is one of the approaches that I found to be very helpful for that. How has it changed your life, Terry, practicing yoga?
Oh, it's changed a lot. I started off at a young age, at age 15 actually, learning to meditate. My mother, I was having migraine headaches at an early age, and my mom was really progressive and took me to, because I didn't have my license yet, drove me to transcendental meditation classes for, I think it was a 2-month training. And so it was a great tool that I used to help my headaches, but even more than that, it was a tool that I used through high school, through college, and obviously I still do meditation, even though I don't do transcendental meditation per se. So I started doing yoga without ever calling it yoga. So I started with that meditation component. And then in my 20s, I became a runner. And just naturally, I think I started a pranayama practice where I found that if I controlled my breath and my strokes and kept it even the whole time. So for example, I would inhale for 4 steps, exhale for 4 steps. And even if I was running a race, I kept that pattern. And so and that is pranayama. It's, controlling your movements. And then maybe 15 years later is when I took my first yoga class. And it's where, but from that first class, it just put it all together for me. And so I can't say that in the early years I practiced all that consistently, but as time went on, I became more and more consistent. And now if I don't, so my bedroom is right next to my yoga room, and if I don't do yoga in the morning before I do anything, the whole quality of my day is not as positive. I notice a big difference that if I start off my day doing yoga, not only do I physically feel better, but I'm calmer, I'm more focused, and it doesn't take long to get away from a practice that you start losing that. So yes, it's totally changed my life, and I don't know that I will ever not do yoga.
Yeah. Well, you get a huge beaming smile on your face when you talk about it. And I concur. I find that my days are different when I start the morning with yoga. And for those who might be newer to yoga, or maybe even those who are, wherever you are with your practice in it, you mentioned the yamas and the niyamas. Of course, there are 8 limbs to yoga. A lot of people think of the asanas. Could you just briefly give a little outline, or just kind of share an overview of the different aspects of yoga?
So the yamas and the niyamas, they're your social ethics, they're your personal ethics. Some deal with, and it's interesting, more and more women who are doing commentary on the Yoga Sutras are kind of switching the language to being more positive. So asteya means non-stealing, but from some of the more recent language, it also means abundance. So so viewing the world in just a little
As though you have enough.
yes, you have enough, so you wouldn't need to
Or that you have your own, in your own consciousness, you believe you have enough, so that therefore you
right.
would be less likely to want to steal.
Exactly. Um, so those social ethics, so the yamas are more with outside in the world, your niyamas are more your internal ethics. It could also deal with like one of them has to do with aparekraha, and I might not even be pronouncing that correctly, but technically that means non-hoarding. So again, it brings in the idea of having enough. Cleanliness, or having simplicity in your life. Being able to work in moderation in all aspects of your life. So those are some of those ethics. And then it moves on to the asanas, which is your physical practice. And then from there, it moves into pranayama, or breath control. And there's so many different bright breathing exercises that are done in various types of yoga. And then you start moving into the 4 areas of meditation. So the first one would be taking your experience and all the sensory input that's going on around you and focusing more internally. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of screening out what's going on so that you can then move into that single pointed focus, mm-hmm. which starts the meditation process. And then maintaining that and going deeper would be your next stage. And then your last stage, samadhi, is where you're really feeling in that state of bliss or connection. And there's different people that think that samadhi can occur for just seconds, or that you stay in that state, and there could be actually different stages of that. So it depends on who you read and what their interpretation is. But in general, those would be your 8 limbs.
Yeah, and thank you for describing that. And of course, every body, every being is different mm-hmm. in how they might connect with that bliss more readily.
Right.
Others, it might be a longer developmental process for them for some reason, mm-hmm. But everybody is different in how they develop that, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So as we're both occupational therapists, I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit more about how it's enhanced your occupational therapy practice.
Yoga gave me tools that I could use to achieve the same goals in my practice that I was doing in a way that was still effective, but maybe not as much fun or connected with students as much as what I'm finding yoga to be. Mm-hmm. So because I've worked in a school system for a long time, a typical OT session is about a half hour. Your goals often have to do with fine motor skills, sometimes core muscle strength, visual perception, ocular motor skills. And so you could approach that different ways. If you're taking a student one-on-one and you're working on those specific skills, you make that as fun as you can. Mm-hmm. But if you can integrate them with a whole class or a whole group and a yoga type setting, it makes the learning fun. It makes it engaging. It makes it social. And the kids don't even know that they're doing therapy. Mm-hmm. And I just find, well, okay, and actually this is a point that I was hoping to be able to bring out. What attracted me the most about yoga is that when you work in a medical model, you're looking at deficits. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is, because you're getting reimbursed to work on deficits.
Well, people have to be, in our current healthcare system, mm-hmm. some would say it's really a sick care system. People have to have some type of limitation, disease, right. or something that's, quote, wrong before right. they can access the healthcare system, because we currently don't have reimbursement for wellness and prevention, which I hope will be changing soon.
Yes, I do too. So when you work in that deficit system, it just kind of creates a whole different mindset and thought. When you use yoga and you think of yoga as your frame of reference, you start to celebrate the child, the whole child, and not look at those deficits.
What they're able to do, right? You look at what they're able to do.
Absolutely. You look at what they're able to do, you enhance what they're able to do. And just by going through the process of of doing yoga, you're working on all those other skills that you used to call deficits.
Mm-hmm.
And you're enhancing all those. You brought up a point in your own practice of doing Iyengar yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and I know only a little bit of Iyengar yoga. I've done just a little bit of it, but I do know some Iyengar trained therapists, and it's interesting because this is probably one of the biggest difference in adult yoga and children's yoga is when you're teaching children, you never correct them.
Mm.
Um, you might help them out if they're doing something that's not safe, or they're struggling to figure out what they're doing and they don't know how to move their body because they might have difficulties with praxis or motor planning. But whatever the child does is their yoga. So if you're in a warrior two pose and their pose doesn't look exactly like you, but you see them beaming because they're really embracing that strength of that pose, you leave that alone.
They're being a warrior.
They're being a warrior. That's right. They're embodying that emotion of being a warrior and their expression of it. And I'll often say to kids, everybody's down dog is going to look different because we all have different bodies. So there's that sense of kids are already whole, kids are already awesome. And we're just enhancing that and empowering them. And as they become more and more empowered, they're picking up more and more skills just naturally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So
So
it's also accepting where their body is, which is true for adults.
right.
And then over time, they may either, as they practice yoga, they may self-correct, or
Right.
in time it might evolve. And it's true. Some people, I mean, I've been in enough yoga classes that some of the teachers will say, some people just seem to naturally, they can just literally fall into a pose as though they've done it 1,000 times, and other people really struggle, and everybody's just different. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Everybody's different. And also always getting across that yoga is not competitive.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can compete with yourself and just say, oh, okay, I was able to hold this for 3 breaths last week. I'm going to try and hold it for 4 breaths. So that's okay, but it's not competitive, amongst the class or amongst, each other. Although I will say that sometimes they do get a little competitive about like seeing how many. One thing that I do a lot of is kneeling sun salutations, which is a more child-friendly version of a traditional sun salutation. And I will sometimes say, let's see how many we can get in before the song ends, but
That's playful. That's playful and fun.
That's fun. Exactly. That's fun. One other thing that I wanted to mention is I talked about interoception and kids developing that internal awareness. In yoga, I forgot this component. We often do yoga games, and a lot of our yoga games either have to do with interpersonal social relations or affirmations, but sometimes we'll do intuition games. I knew.
One of my favorite subjects.
That's why I wanted to bring it in. So there's a game that we play. It's called the feather game. And where all the children will be sitting in a circle. They'll be sitting, crisscross. I call that flower pose. And we'll have one child go out into the hallway. The feather will get hidden under another child's leg. And they get 3 times to guess, and they'll walk around. And what I always tell the kids to do is we want the person who has to guess be successful. So without giving any facial recognition, we want to just sit there and think about that person and see if we can help them out mentally to find the person who has a feather. And they love that game.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun. And there's many things happening, higher cognitive skills. Yep. Quantum physicists now talk about, or for many years been talking about, non-local theory or non-local consciousness. Mm-hmm. And that's also like a group skills training, right? To like support each other. So I just think it's so beautiful what you're doing, Terry, and I'm so grateful to speak with you today. I know there's a wealth of so much more you could share with all of us. And you do teach people who want to learn yoga. Oh, I just wanted to share too that it sounds like a lot of the things that you're teaching the young people, I think a lot of older people would really enjoy too.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, when you take children's yoga training, I've had people say it's like going on their own personal retreat that's just so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So for those who want to learn yoga, any suggestions you could give for somebody who's maybe just interested in yoga? And then also for somebody who's maybe an educator or a healthcare practitioner or would like to be doing something like what you're inspiring so many to do, to teach young people, how can they get in touch with you? Or because you're a trainer as well of yoga. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I teach level 1 to 3 Radiant Child Yoga. It's a 4-day workshop, although 1 and 2 can be taught in 3 days. And it's the foundation level for Radiant Child's Yoga, either 95-hour Children's Yoga certification, or Radiant Child has a whole 200-hour certification. So it's that basic foundation level. And then I'm a mentor for people that have completed all the coursework for the 200-hour level. So if somebody is interested in teaching yoga, let's say to adults, my recommendation would be is to find the type of yoga that resonates with you. Mm-hmm. Because there's Iyengar yoga, there's Kundalini yoga, there's Yin yoga, there's restorative yoga, there's literally a yoga really for everybody. So first find what type of yoga you're interested in, and then find a teacher or instructor that resonates for you. And it's not so different if you're somebody who wants to bring yoga to children. Whether it's in a school or whether I've had people take my workshops that are just parents, not just parents, but that are parents that just want to teach their own children, or that live in, that work in the community and want to bring it to their library or community center. So same type of process. I would look at the different children's yoga schools that are out there, and there's many these days, and there's many very good ones. I did a lot of research and found an instructor and found a program that resonated with me personally. And it was one that I really felt that I could embody and teach to children. And I had looked around for a while, and once I found the program that resonated with me, it just flowed from there. So Google search, if you're looking for children's yoga, just Google children's yoga certification. And then obviously there's tons of adult yoga certifications these days too.
Mm-hmm. And for those who are just personally interested in yoga, they could maybe find a local studio and maybe take a class or two and start exploring, or any suggestions you would have for them?
Well, I think that different people are drawn to yoga for different reasons. And many people are drawn for the physical practice. They want to increase their flexibility, their endurance, their strength. And they're really exercise sports minded. Probably a good place for them to start looking is at your local Ys, YMCAs, YWCAs, or fitness centers often offer yoga. Many people enter yoga from the physical practice and then start branching out and get hooked and become much more interested in both the breathing and the meditation practices. If it's somebody who's looking for more of a spiritual experience, then I would definitely look at a yoga studio. Mm-hmm. The atmosphere that you're going to have at a community center or a Y is going to be very different than a yoga studio. And all you have to do is walk into both and you could just feel the difference. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I think those would be the two things, and every studio and every teacher is a little bit different, but just explore. When I was looking for yoga classes, I just would Google yoga classes and put a town down, mm-hmm. and I would come up with several possibilities, and then just look at schedules and see what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And do try to find a teacher if possible, right? Because it's always good to have somebody knowing your health background and being able to assist you as you explore how you can get into the posture, the position yourself. And also, I know there's a lot of meditation apps out there that are helping people. I might be a bit old school in that I think it's a good idea to also have a meditation teacher, although a lot of people are also coming into meditation through yoga, which is a big part of yoga as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I would really stress is that when you're in a yoga class, you really need to take care of your own body. And know that just because something's being instructed by the teacher and you see other students doing it, if that does not feel right for your body, you always have permission by the teacher, I'm sure, to back out or to just assume a different posture. but taking care of yourself and really listening, because just like anything, yoga can heal, and yoga can hurt if you try and push it too far, or try and do something that maybe your body's either not ready for, or your body was never meant to do in the first place. So keeping yourself safe, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else you would like to share, or anything else you would like people to know about yoga?
I do want to kind of put in a plug for a relatively new field, which is yoga therapy. And it's been around for a while. However, there's more yoga therapy programs popping up, and there's a big difference between yoga and yoga therapy. There's an association, an international association, IAYT, International Association for Yoga Therapists, and it's a very long training. It's about 900 to 1,000 hours, and it differs from yoga in that it really looks at, there's actually two different schools. Some are more physical therapy type oriented, and some are more emotionally psychodynamic oriented. But it really looks to make changes, or to help you to make changes in your life at a much deeper level. And there's yoga therapy for trauma, people who have had trauma, for people that have eating disorders, for people going through cancer. I know one person who does yoga therapy right when patients are getting their cancer treatments. So it's a whole new field that's opening up for perhaps the psychologists, or the counselors, or OTs, or PTs, speech and language pathologists out in the audience, of just something to look into, because more and more research is showing that our emotions are embedded in our tissues. And sometimes talk therapy is very effective for many, many people, but sometimes you need a more somatic type practice, such as yoga therapy, and there's others as well, to help unlock that, and to help really progress in your therapy.
Yeah, well said. Somatic, soma meaning body. And would you say, as an occupational therapist, that is how you've been, it sounds like that is how you've been using yoga as a form of therapy?
I definitely have. Definitely have, which is why I decided to start pursuing that yoga therapy certification. And I think if you have licensure, you can say that you're doing yoga therapy, but if you're a yoga teacher, Yoga Alliance has been really clear that they do not want you using the language of yoga therapy, from a liability point of view as well, and thus the extra training. And
yeah, well, I mean, I think about our occupational therapy training, and all the people who might be listening who are healthcare practitioners, that it is quite extensive. A lot of the training that we had: anatomy and physiology, neurobiology, kinesiology, and then to add in the quote disease or pathology of the mind, body, spirit, and all the precautions and treatments they might be getting, or medications. I mean, there is a lot to know, in addition to bringing in yoga as well.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, this has been so lovely. And I'm wondering, we didn't discuss this, but is there a simple, maybe a 30-second or 1-minute breath work, or simple meditation that you could guide us in as we finish up here today?
Oh, I do have a favorite one.
Oh, awesome.
And this one spans all ages. So take your non-dominant hand and take your pointer finger and place your finger at the base of your thumb. And with your eyes closed, breathe in and slide your pointer finger up your thumb, and pause and breathe out down your thumb. Breathe in, going up your pointer finger. Pause and breathe out, going down your pointer finger. Breathe in, coming up your middle finger. Pause and breathe out, going down your middle finger. Breathe in, going up your ring finger. Pause and going down your ring finger. Breathe in, going up your pinky. Pause and going down your pinky. And gently open your eyes. And typically I'll have students do that 3 times, once with their eyes open looking, once with their eyes closed, and then once all by themselves at their own pace.
Oh, beautiful.
And I've had teachers report that they'll see their students underneath their desk doing their 5-finger breathing.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yeah, and please do not do this if you're driving a car.
Definitely not when you're driving a car.
Yeah, yeah, but that's great a great skill or tool that you've been teaching them. And clearly, I know you're just full of so many of these goodies and techniques that these kids can take and adults. And I love how it's spreading to the parents and the administrators. And it just sounds like it's a really beautiful environment. And it sounds like a lovely school where you're working. And we just so appreciate your time here today, Terry.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And I wish you the best as you go forward with your yoga therapy certification. And I can just tell that that's bringing you more and more joy, which is what we need more in this world.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
so
you.
if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you to learn more, or if they have any questions, if you're open to that? I don't know if you want to direct them to your website and or email.
Yeah, if they went to my website or my email address is on my website. It's www.lightinyouyoga.com.
Nice.
And you'd be able to contact me from there. And my website's mostly at this point for Radiant Child Yoga, although it'll expand as I move along in yoga therapy. And my email address is ttovey@comcast.net.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to continuing to see your journey expand and for more of us to feel that love and joy within ourselves. And so we can radiate it out to others as well. And I will just finish here with a namaste, which means the light in me sees the light in you, or honors the light in you.
It's namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Terry. Blessings and be well, everybody. Till next time.